How's it going? So I want to do a multi-part tutorial dealing with the dog tags. I actually learned this from a tutorial Grayscale Gorilla, but I thought I would just do it more like a tutorial. He kind of drones on. I just wanted to do it more like educational, where you can follow along easier. And then I'm going to also go beyond that. I'm going to do the laying out of the tags, bring a floor in, texturing, lighting. And then I'll follow it with some After Effects stuff in Adobe Elements 10. So anyway, let's get started. Let's go in here and select a rectangle spline. And down here in Object Properties, let's change its height to 200 and rounding to 100. Okay. We want to turn this into a polygon object. So let's come in here and grab an extrude node and drop our rectangle on top of that. Let's go ahead and select the extrude node, and down here in its properties, I'll change the width to 5. And then let's select caps. And what we need to do here is we need to create multiple polygons. Right now we have a single polygon, and we need multiple polygons on here in order for the displacement map to work properly. So under types, switch from n-gons to quadrangles. Below that, check regular grid and drop the width down to 9. Okay. Next thing we want to create is the ring around the tag. So back into splines, we'll grab a circle spline, and let's drop its radius down to 5. Let's control drag a copy of the rectangle out. And let's come back in here and grab a sweep node. And we'll drop our rectangle in the sweep node and our circle in above it. And that creates our ring. Finally, what we need to do is create the hole for the chain. We'll be using a bool for that. So let's come into here and grab an object. And then under its properties, let's drop its radius down to 11. Height, 13. And in coordinates, on the x-axis, we want minus 174. And then under rotation for the y-axis, we want 90. Okay. Finally, we'll come into here and grab our bool. And what we want to do is we want to drop our cylinder into the bool first, and our extrude node rectangle in above it. And that creates our hole for our chain. All right, next thing we want to do is we want to start create the material for the dog tags. So let's come in here and click Create, New Material, open up the editor, and we'll come in here, and for color, let's drop the brightness down to 50%. Let's uncheck specular. Let's check reflection, drop that down to 50%. Let's check environment. And in textures, let's go ahead and grab a gradient. Let's open that up. What we're going to do here is we're going to control drag an instance of color across the spectrum here, white to black. And what this is going to do is it's going to give a cool shadowing texture to the dog tags. Actually, let's backspace that. We don't need that last one. And we'll just kind of spread them out evenly. That looks fine for now. Next thing we want to do is we want to check bump. And in textures, we want to grab a noise. We want to drop the noise down to 1%. And then in its properties, down in global scale, let's change that to 10%. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to check our displacement. This is where we're going to bring in our displacement map that we created that's going to displace the polygons and give us that stamped text. So I already have a map pre-made Photoshop image. Let's bring that in. And here's a picture of it. If I hover over it, you'll see the size is large. The larger the better. And this is basically true gray and then just black. So true gray would be like 123 on RGB. All right, so while we're in here, let's come down here and talk a minute about black point, white point. The way displacement works is when you use the black point, it's it's telling the displacement tag to push the polygons outward. When you use white point, it tells the displacement tag to push the polygons inward. In this case, we want them to be pushed outward for our stamp, so we'll just change these two around and put 1 for black and 0 for white, and you can see how it's changed here. Okay, finally, we'll come back in. Let's check our displacement again and come into displacement. And we want to drop our strength down to 10%. And to compensate for that, we'll kick the height up to 16%. We want our stamp to look hand stamped. We don't want it to be too sharp edged and machined looking. So this will help in that. And then finally, down here on subpolygon displacement, we want to check subpolygon displacement. What that does is just helps in defining our stamp, gives it a smoother look. So that's what we need. And last thing is we'll drop the level down to 3. Again, we don't want it to be too defined. We still want it to be smoothed and stamped look to it. So that's it for that. Let's control drag a copy of that out, open up our second one, turn off the bump, and we'll turn off our displacement. And the second one is going to be for our ring. So let's go ahead and drop that on our sweep nerve. And then the first one will drop onto the extrude nerve. All right. All right, the next thing I want to do is let's come into Windows, Customization, Customize Commands, and in Name Filter, punch in Texture. And if you go ahead and scroll down, you'll find Use Texture Mode. Left click and drag that over to your toolbar. And this is available in the modeling layout, but it's not available in the standard layout. And I prefer to use this. You could use this here, texture axis mode, but I prefer to use this when working with the displacement mapping, so displacement tags. So, all right, so let's select that. Let's select our extrude nerve and make sure that our tag is selected, and then down here, select our tag. And you can see this is our displacement tag, our map that we have here. And if you come down here into projections, right now it's set at UV. We want to set it at flat. And you can see it's projecting right onto our object that we want to displace, our tag. Now we want to size it into position. So down here under length U, we want to punch in 300. Under length V, 150. Let's come up here and select coordinates. And on the x-axis, we want minus 238. On the y position, y-axis, we want 48. And then on the x-axis size, we want 120. And on the y-axis size, we want 90. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look, make sure that everything is lining up properly. We'll take a render region, go ahead and just cover that area. And you can see it's exactly the way that we want it. The size looks good, our height, our edges are still nice and smoothed, has that old kind of old stamp look. All right, so finally what we want to do is we want to select all of our objects here and come into objects and group objects. That'll group them all under a null. Let's rename this. I'm going to rename mine DT, short for dog tags. Go ahead and control drag a copy. That gives us 2 dog tags. Select both, and then finally under the y-axis for rotation, we want minus 90. And what this will do is just drop these tags down onto their back. So our projection mapping, everything's facing upward. All right, we'll go ahead and bring this up. And let's do a render. All right, so this is basically set up. There's no lighting on the scene other than the default Cinema 4D lighting. And you can see some of the texturing at work here. We have our bump map. This here is our gradient that we have in the environment. You can see the gradient here, how it gives a nice texture here, as well as across the face. You can see our gradient that we did, the black to white. So once we get the lighting and floor and stuff in here, it's going to look great, but this is pretty nice just as it sits. Anyway, so that's it on this one. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.